right. Well, welcome and thank you for joining us for our Unpacked podcast, where we are unpacking the realities around today's public schools. I am Mickey O'Neill. I am your host, and I am joined by Jason Mellema, Superintendent at Ingham Intermediate School District. Say hello to our audience today, Jason.
Hello. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Jason Mellema, Superintendent here at Ingham ISD.
All right. Well, this is a continuation in our series about information regarding intermediate school districts and how they support students, local districts, and families. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the history of intermediate school districts and maybe some projections of the future. So, Jason, can you share a little bit about the history of ISDs and how it intersects with Michigan Department of Education and our local districts and what that looked like prior to today?
Sure. So if we step way back in time, we go back to the 1800s, we have to understand that it was a very different school system that existed within inside the state. Most schools were county, rural schools. They existed within a couple, usually on a block. You can still see some of the remnants of those as you drive around certain rural areas within inside the state. But they existed every couple miles, and kids would come in. It was first grade through fifth grade, first grade through eighth grade. All depended on who the primary teacher was. It's a very old system. That was how the rural schools actually operated. And so when that was kind of brought into existence, when education was being formalized, we started by having a county superintendent that provided support. So that way people could get certifications to actually teach, to talk about the virtues of why school was important. We didn't have compulsory education at that point in time. There was nobody requiring you to come to school. And also to provide support around best practices, professional development, making sure that curriculum was aligned. It was kind of a county superintendent that actually started to organize that. Then things changed and we went to more of a township-based superintendent. At one point in time, the county superintendent was even elected. Then the township-based superintendent was designated by their townships. Then that evolved and it kind of went back to more of a county-based superintendent system again. And that kind of continued through World War I into World War II. Coming out of World War II was the continuation of services when we think about how do we consolidate the number of districts. At one point in time, as I mentioned, all those rural one-room schoolhouses that existed, there were over 2,000 schools in the state.
Wow.
And so the state started consolidating those, saying that you had to provide a comprehensive education. First through 12th grade was considered a comprehensive education. As I mentioned, most of those rural schools were either K-5 or K-8. And so that work then was handed off to intermediate school districts when they were brought into statute in 1962 to finish the consolidation of districts. And so we were brought in 1962 after a study was completed in 1956 that talked about why there should be this function, this intermediate school district, and how it should support local education agencies, LEAs.
So it's kind of the intermediary, as you said before, between MDE, local districts, and it gives us more of a local look. So instead of the state kind of controlling everything, the county is more focused on a local level to support the local districts. Is that accurate?
Yes, and I think it's important to note that, again, when it started, the county superintendents and then the township superintendents had a lot of responsibilities. Those responsibilities shifted from the superintendents over to the Michigan Department of Education.
Okay.
And then throughout time, the Michigan Department of Education has seen a significant reduction in its amount of staff. It's kind of been defunded by the legislature. So they went from over 2,000 staff members, if I remember correct, and they are down to about 500 now. And so many of those responsibilities have kind of shifted back over to ISDs. So how ISDs operate is an important function here within the state of Michigan in providing those services and supports.
Okay, that's a good historical lesson there. So talk a little bit about the future of ISDs and what you think, or what you'd like to see with the ISDs in the future and how they interact with innovation and working with local districts and helping our students learn at their best.
So consolidation of schools continues to be a topic. This is not a new topic. This is an old topic. Again, going back to the 20s, 30s, the comprehensive education system, and I'm trying to finish that off with respect to coming out of World War II. So by the time we got to 1985, 1990, somewhere in that time frame, we were down to about 535 school districts in the state. Proposal A passed, and then with that was the allowance of public school academies, charter schools. And so then we've seen an increase back to over 800 school districts in the state. But consolidation is a pretty big topic for a lot of legislators right now. How do we gain better efficiencies? Why do I start with all this? Because I think the future of ISDs continues to be in how do we gain efficiencies and provide supports for students and families. So we think about business services, we think about HR services, we think about IT. Technology is huge in everything we do in
Yeah,
schools.
sure is.
Having robust teams is very important. It's very difficult, especially at our smaller schools, but not always just the small schools. Sometimes large schools as well have needs in those areas. Thinking about how we can provide a robust system of support and making sure that you have payroll and accounts payable and you have a business office that can function and support your district, that can be very difficult when those used to be one or two people in a central office. It's much more complex when we think about how we provide information that goes up to, for example, the Office of Retirement Services. You have to be an expert in those areas. And so thinking about ways that we can consolidate those services, offer those opportunities, gains efficiencies. And so when we think about consolidation, we think about gaining efficiencies for districts, not necessarily just shutting down schools like some legislators are talking about at times.
Yeah, it allows them to maybe focus on educating students and letting ISDs support them in ways that might pull them away from that. So that gives them more time in the classroom.
Absolutely.
Love it.
And then if we think about the future, I think there's going to continue to be an important role that ISDs will play. Fee for service is still something that exists out there when we think about professional development opportunities, when we think about, again, some of those shared services that I think is going to continue to grow. But when we think about our continuum of services here for students, ISDs play an important role. They have for years, whether they were called, again, the county superintendent, the township superintendent. And I don't think that's going to change as we move forward. I think if we continue to do things well, we're an important ingredient that makes the recipe sweeter for all of our students and families throughout the area.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today to share a little bit about that, the history and the future of ISDs. And we look forward to have you back and talk more about this in the future.
Sounds great. Looking forward to unpacking it with you more in the future. Thanks.
Thanks.